And here we are live for another episode of Amazon Live Influencer book series. And this is the second episode in the series of the F Motherhood multi-author interviews. And I'm here with Brigid Holder, who is the publisher and co-author as well. How are you, Brigid?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having us again, Adaire. And I'm very excited because my paperback turned up this week. It's really nice to actually hold the book in your hand and be able to, see it in print is always a beautiful thing after the ebook has, had a successful launch on Facebook, on Amazon, which is, wonderful.
Yes, you got a top seller. Is that the best?
Yeah, international.
On Amazon?
International bestseller in 4 countries. We went number 1 in 4 countries and across multiple categories. I think in total there was about 18 categories that we went number 1 in, which is fantastic.
Well, congratulations. And I really look forward to talking to you more and the some of the authors who are with us today about how the book came about and what the contributions are, and listening and hearing people's stories, the mother's stories about their contributions. What I would like to do first is invite people to please make sure that you are making sure that you're sharing this for everybody who is a mother, a grandparent, because I've actually related to a lot of these stories as a grandparent. I've lost the chance to practice on my kids, so but they've given me ample chance to, apply some of these new learnings to my grandkids, which has probably horrified my daughter. So, while we do this, we are live on My Time TV, and we are live. This is on Facebook. Women in Business Amplified. We're also live on LinkedIn, on my profile on LinkedIn, and over on Amazon, where you can purchase the F Motherhood book straight from the live stream. So if you're live over there with us, please do pop in, let us know you're there, and say hi. And as we go, we will, there we go. I'll just pop that there. And so, Brigid, let's get going.
Yeah,
Tell
absolutely.
me, how did this book come about? And I'm really curious about the title, of course.
Yeah, so it's controversial. F Motherhood is a controversial thing to talk about, and I think that at some point in every mother's journey, she comes to a point where she says that. But that's not what the book is about. The book is there to disrupt and to actually talk about the things that we don't always talk about, and we should. So for me, it was the fact that I did not like motherhood. I decided to try to have my first with my husband because he is 8 years older than me, and he was concerned about being too old as the children grew up. And I wasn't ready to have children, but I agreed and could understand fully his viewpoint. And perhaps now looking back, I should have done it a bit earlier. I'm now, with a 15 and 12-year-old teenage boys in the house, and I'm nearing 50, perhaps it would have, in hindsight, would have been better to do it younger. But I was not ready. And being thrown into motherhood and feeling this, overwhelming sense of what have I done? What the F have I done? This is not who I thought I was going to be, or where I was going to be, or how I was going to be showing up in the world. And it was something that I really struggled with, and I never spoke about. I pretended that everything was okay. I pretended to be this perfect mum in the image of what social conditioning had taught me. And initially I thought the book was going to be my book, and then I got stuck and I was like, oh, it's meant to be lots of people's books. So 14 of us have collaborated and share the stories far and wide. They're so different, the stories that are in here, and you'll hear from some of the authors today a bit about their stories. And it's, individual stories about how they chose to show up in motherhood, and perhaps the struggles they had, or perhaps something traumatic that happened to them during motherhood, and just how it can still be all okay. Because, we can take everybody's advice and listen to all the social conditioning, but then go and do it our own way anyway. And it's the right way.
Yeah, that I know, and it's different for everybody, isn't it? And I think that's the thing, is trying to fit into that little mainstream box. Can do our heads in and our hearts and everything else.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring in, we have our first authors that are popping in. We've got 4 beautiful women, beautiful mothers who are going to speak to us today. And I love I feel like I'm the matriarch, because it's like I'm going, well, let's have a look. We've got Brianna is popping in, and Jacqui, and we'll have a chat with them. Oh, hang on, there we are, Brianna. And we'll be a bit like the Brady Bunch in a minute.
There we are.
I just need there we go. All right. So welcome, girls.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
A pleasure. So what I'm curious about. Sorry, we've got. Hello. Okay, so we've got good audio for you. You can all hear?
Yeah, we can.
Yep. Okay, all right. So let's start with Brianna. Tell us a bit about your story and about how you became involved in this book. Firstly, how did you find Brigid?
Well, I think that Brigid found me, and I really need to clarify this story. Like, as far back as I've been able to see, I got a message from Brigid just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to know more about it? And, quite often we get people, reaching out to us to see if we'd be interested in what they're working on. And some of the time it's a yes, some of the time it's a no. But really intuitively, I was like, yeah, this is something that I'd be interested in looking more into. And how she came across me, I don't know. That's a question for Brigid that I'd like to know. But I remember it all happened very, very swiftly. So I looked into the book, and then I distinctly remember being in the bath with my son on a Thursday night, and Brigid was like, do you want to do this? And I was just like, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. So we teed it all up, and I looked at when the deadline was, and I was like, oh, okay, am I going to be able to do that? This was Thursday night, and Brigid says, yeah, you've got until Monday morning. I was like, right, okay. This is happening. And I remember it so clearly, being in the bath with my son, and I just really felt into this great thing that I was stepping into. And suddenly all of these words just started streaming into my consciousness, and I jumped out of the bath, started writing things down, wrote half of the chapter that night, and then, slowly over the course until Monday morning, finished it off. So that's how it happened. It was just swift, and just felt like something I was really meant to do.
Oh, well, that's so when you did that, in a few days, how many edits did you have on that?
Not many. I didn't want to be my own inner critic. I just wanted it to come out. Yeah. And it was quite the act in learning to surrender, So not how should this be? How is everyone going to think about it? But what does my soul need to express right now? And it was quite a cathartic journey as well in the whole writing process.
Okay, wow. So what about you, Jacqui? What was it? How did you come to really connect with Brigid and get that process happening? What was it for you?
Great story. At the beginning of this year, I had something drop into me through a meditation that I was going to be an author this year, and I had no idea why, how. It never really been a really big goal. Yes, it had been a goal of mine, but for me, it was always one day in the future. I thought I was going to be 70 writing about, my life to date at that point, and didn't really realize how it was going to come to fruition. And I remember I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I remember one day seeing I had 3 people in different countries, so one in Australia, one in New Zealand, and then one in the UK, that used to be, so she lives on the other side of the world, but her kids used to she doesn't school her kids anymore, but her kids used to go to my kids' school. And I was like, how are you 3 connected? This is really bizarre. 3 different areas of my world in different countries are actually connected here. And I just made a comment wow, so crazy, my worlds are colliding or something. And then I had an inbox from another girlfriend saying, hey, I'm part of this book. I think you should you've got a story to tell. So that's kind of how it came about for me. And as soon as I met Brigid, it was like the whole process was so easy. It was so seamless. It was just really beautiful. I can totally relate to Brianna when the deadline being like 5 days or something, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. I did get a couple of extensions, thank you, but it was really just, yeah, but it didn't flow easy for me, actually. I really found myself challenged as to what part of my motherhood journey was I about to share. And because I've got so many different elements and so many really, as we all do, we all have such incredible, unique stories and experiences that people can relate to and that will help others. And for me, I opted to write about my journey as a stepmom because, unlike majority of people, I became a stepmom before I became a biological mum. And I became a stepmom in my late 20s before I had children, when in theory, I was in my prime. I was not ready to kind of have, I can absolutely relate to Brigid in a sense of not being ready for children, because when I did have my son, my biological son 4 years ago, even though I already had 3 children, I don't think Cooper was a surprise for us. He was meant to be, because I was on the it was meant to be. He came to us unexpectedly. I was 10 weeks pregnant before I even found out that I was pregnant. With him, if he wasn't a surprise for us, then I think I'd still be today going, I'm not ready to have children. I'm not ready. And so that has kind of entered my life in a very different way. But I became a mum before I realized I was a mum. And that was what my story became about. So, yeah, that was for me. Yeah. And it was such a beautiful process.
I love how the universe works. All those people were connected to you and had been connected to me, and the ripple effect of connections through social media and Amazon is just amazing for us to be able to connect to each other in that way. And Brianna, I stalked you for about 2 weeks before I reached out to you. I was actually you speak so well, and I was drawn to listening to you speaking, and I've told you since about this, and it's something that I was like, oh, I want her in my book.
That's so interesting.
I had to hang around for a while to see if you were actually a mum, because some people don't put all of their life on social media, so it's it's kind of something that I don't know how I came across you. I always, when I'm starting to do a book, ask the universe to send me people who are appropriate for the book for me to connect with. And I think there's been one person who got angry with me for asking them if they'd like to take a look at being in a multi-author book in all the books they've done. And I would have contacted thousands of women. Everybody else is like, oh, that sounds so good. And, some people have already written a book and don't want to do that, or, all the reasons are different, but it's not hard for me to reach out to people. But some people, it's like, yep, I want to connect with them. And then definitely with Brianna, it was a hang around for a while. And then I was like, oh, I want her in this book. So, yeah, it is everybody's different in how it comes about. But thank you for sharing your stories, because it is so important that we show what variety in motherhood there is and how we can all do it differently.
So, Brianna, you share a bit about your story. So what motivated you? And you said that there was that drive to write. You had some words coming into your head. So what was the essence of the story that you actually that came out?
Yeah, so what I like to talk about is I really present how motherhood came to me in stages. Like what I mentioned in the book was that a few years before my son was conceived, I had this potent experience where I just knew that I would have a son. I knew what his name would be. So I kind of started to mentally adjust to the fact of motherhood, because before then, I was really young. I had my son when I was 22. So I hadn't really decided if I was going to have children or not. And then, I met my son's father. I had a miscarriage, and in that moment, like I knew that because I'd experienced the loss that, you know, and that devastated me, but I also knew that this was something that I really wanted, you know, and it also prepared my body. So first it was mentality that was prepared, and then it was my body that was prepared. So I knew, like, right, well, obviously my body needs some healing to be able to, you know, go through this journey. And then, yeah, my son came along, and it was so healing for me. And I love to talk about that journey of, you know, I got to experience that loss, but then I got to experience this life inside of me again, which was beautiful. However, also within that journey, there was so much trauma. Like it was trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. So it was kind of like, how do I manage all of those things while showing up as being a mom, like dealing with the struggles of my own mortality while I'm raising this tiny human. So, you know, I talk a lot about that, and I also talk a lot about my perspective on intergenerational trauma and how often motherhood can actually, in particular, trigger these things that are passed down to us intergenerationally, because it's quite a big passage. And, you know, I talk a little bit about my Indigenous heritage and things like that. So it's really that combination of how do I nurture this beautiful gift of motherhood and the life that my son gave me, you know, in that moment of devastation, and also later down the track when I was feeling suicidal. Like, he was one of my 2 reasons for really keeping on. But at the same time, how do I deal with this trauma, and how do I find myself in the midst of that? And then just being able to decide, well, you know, this journey that I'm going on is okay. Being able to realize, well, anyone who was going through this would be feeling a bit skewed, a bit disconnected, but I'm allowed to acknowledge that I'm feeling that way. And I'm also allowed to prioritize myself again and be more than just someone's mum. Like, who am I? So yeah, it really talks about that journey.
I think that's, and sharing that vulnerability is, I think, part of the essence of what you've captured, Brigid, with your authors, to get them to, well, I guess, like you said before, the universe is providing you with the right people, with the right words at the right time, to be able to put together a really powerful book that's going to help. I think that changing that perspective. So,
yeah, that's so true. And I think that with Brianne's story, I think it's almost like others are then given the permission to have that opportunity to, you know, have that awakening, so to speak, through motherhood, that they're not just a mum, and it's something that, you know, is okay to express that, and okay to make decisions that put yourself first. And it's something that a lot of mothers struggle with. And, you know, to get to the point where you are thinking about suicide, and then to have a child who brings you out of that is, you know, it's a powerful thing to read. Her story is amazing, and, you know, it's one that a lot of people will connect with.
We've got Linda here, and also an author, and she's saying it seems to be a recurring theme for all authors, something that she just had to do. So it's that whether you want to do it or not, if it's your time, baby, you're doing it.
So true.
And Linda's also saying that it's great to hear your backstories, and I think that's really cool that we can bring them out here, and have a bit of an understanding about this. Not just words on a page; they're words from real people with real feelings and real experiences and real vulnerabilities, and that's where the power is for that. So Linda's going, the connection also is what the book is really about. So thank you for your input there, Linda. Appreciate seeing you here. And also do remember, if you are here live or for the replay, welcome. And we would love for you to help other mothers and, well, parents as well, just to, you know, if we share the love and show as many people as possible this series of interviews, we can help give permission for people to be themselves and understand that it's okay. It's okay to do that just by sharing the stories. I think this is really powerful. So we are live on Facebook on mytimetv.live. We're also live over on LinkedIn and Amazon Live. And I will pop the link in there in a moment, so that if you're on Facebook, you can pop over there and purchase the book straight from the broadcast here. We also broadcast out to 50 channels of TV on demand via the Binge Network syndication program. So we're on Apple and Roku and Sony and Panasonic and all over the place. Amazon Fire, we have an app there as well. So we're everywhere, folks. What I'd like to do for Brianna and Jacqui is just moments that you had and the lessons that you feel that you could help impart to a reader so that they can take some things on board.
Wow. The aha moments that I had, I actually just kind of kept coming almost with every sentence I did. I was like, wow, from a surface level, I understand what my journey was, and I can, I've spoken about my journey. I've told friends about my journey. My friends have been part of my journey. But actually putting it to paper and looking at how it has unfolded, for me, I suddenly relived it, but I relived it from a completely different way. And that was hugely cathartic for me. I guess in terms of having a true realization of how my life unfolded, but also having a really great realization of where I am, where I was meant to be at each given time. And as much as I look back at the times where I was, experiencing and life was just kind of day by day, it was such a struggle. And as I reflected through the writing process, it was really, really healing. And it gave me true, I guess, guidance to know that I'm exactly where I need to be at even each given moment, as hard as that is in that moment. What do people get out of the book? I think it is purely just permission to be themselves and understanding that they are not alone. So, like, for me, when somebody picks up our book and holds the book in their hand, as they read each chapter, most people will be able to connect one way or another to each of the different stories. They're so unique and so different. But when you're reading that book, you're supported and held by 14 other women at any given moment, that you're not alone. And it just, in that instant, it shares with you that you're being held currently by 14 other people, but also every other, like every mum has these challenges. Every mum at some point does go F motherhood, but every mum can gain something out of it. And I think it's just, I just think it's really, really powerful book. And I've had so many friends and family members reach out going, wow, either A, I didn't really know your story, but from different avenues, what my story has done and what I've had a lot of people reach out to me to share is that it's given them a different perspective on the relationship that they've had with their own step parents and how they can suddenly see things in a different light that they never expected or never saw. I also had another friend of mine who is entering into a relationship where her partner has children. And she's like, wow, I really love the fact that I'm not going to be alone in this journey and I can have someone to speak about when things get tough. So I've spoken about things that often aren't spoken about. I've spoken about the things that we experience and go through that is just part of it. But when you can actually dissect it to share it, and as I said, allow people to know that they're not alone in this journey is huge and powerful.
It is. And Linda's saying, beautiful, we're creating a sacred sisterhood for every mother to be held in. That's lovely. And so, Brianna.
That was so beautiful, first and foremost. Like, my whole body is just kind of tingling, because that's really what it is. It is about, that sacred fire of togetherness and belonging. And one of the most beautiful things that I experienced after the book was published was that a friend reached out and said that, I spoke into the things that are deep within her that she hasn't expressed. And that gave her such a sense of belonging, which for me was huge, because throughout that entire time, I felt very isolated, and that I lacked belonging. So to have been able to give someone something that in the moment where the story was occurring that I didn't have was so powerful. And so that was a huge aha. Like, I felt as though even if the only purpose of the book was to have that experience for that one person, I was like, what a gift is that, you know? And I just felt just so genuinely grateful that happened. One of the biggest ahas while I was writing was I was actually in quite a lot of physical pain, which I found really interesting. And there's this kind of connection that we can have with our body when it comes to repressing our experience and bypassing ourselves and denying our truth of what's really happening, you know, in exchange for an expectation of how we should be. Or, you know, obviously as motherhood, we think that we're meant to be something which denies often our own experience of F motherhood. So often that can come up in physical presentations like disease or illness or things like that. And then what I really found interesting was that the more I was able to not try to avoid the pain that I was feeling, but ease into it, I was also starting to re-acknowledge myself and my truth and my story, because a lot of what I wrote about in the book, I didn't really speak to anyone about at the time. And I didn't really deal with it. And that was still stored in my body, and that was there in pain. So I found it to be this really beautiful connective journey where I was able to really hear into what my body was saying and how could I express that and how could I write about it. And one of the most beautiful ways to process emotions is to see it from a different perspective. So speak it to someone and get a different perspective, or write it out and look back at it and have that different perspective, or, you know, play music and create beauty from what it is that you're experiencing. And for me, it was, that was so beautiful. And then the other one was to be able to see things from right the here and now. How does what has happened before me in terms of, you know, my mother, my grandparents, the generations before, how has that influenced the life I'm living today? And how can I decide in the moment to be able to influence the future generations? You know what I mean? So being able to honor my experience, kind of like re-empower myself and decide that I don't have to be living in this cycle of detachment or what's happened before, that I can, you know, influence the future generations.
Beautiful. I think that's, oh my God, those stories are so powerful. Linda has commented again. She said that's one of the things that she loves about the book. There are things to change perspective and enable you to approach your relationships differently. Always room for growth. I think that's amazing. And she's also commented, such powerful self-knowing, Brianna. Thank you very much for sharing the insight. So she summed it up beautifully. I'd just like to let you know that we have, for those of you who are in the broadcast, check the host chat. There should be a little red dot there. We have lost the Amazon link. We do have 2 more beautiful authors that we're going to speak to, but what I'm going to do is we'll close this section and we'll restart the show with a new Amazon link, because I can't put it in during the I was hoping this would happen all in the background, but it hasn't. So, you know, whatever. Well, I'm saying it out loud. So, Brigid, given that, is there anything that you would like to just sum up, final words, and then we'll?
Yeah, I think that you know, the book itself is something that it's almost like a resource for new mothers. You know, those who are already in motherhood are going to benefit from it. And if they're at a stage where they're still feeling like they're stuck, or they're not quite where they should be, or they're feeling like they've lost their identity, this is a great book for you to read. But for new mothers, this is a great gift to give to new mothers. Motherhood is tough, and not a lot of people will tell you that. So, you know, this is an opportunity for you to see some real stories about the struggles that people have had, or the triumphs that they've had. And, you know, you've got this opportunity to look at it from a different aspect through 14 different eyes. And it's something that, you know, is not on the market. So check it out, guys, is all I want to say. And thank you to the authors who have shared their souls and been so vulnerable through this whole process, not just in the book.
No, thank you, Brigid, for that space.
And thank you, Brigid, for creating that space, for doing it. Yes, Jacqui, exactly what you just said. Is there an echo in here? And thank you so much, ladies, Brianna and Jacqui, for joining us and sharing your stories. It's amazing. We will be back in about 5 minutes once we get the tech sorted out. I'm still smiling, and we will be connected to where we're supposed to be. So watch this space. If you are on watching on Amazon, well, if you were on Amazon, you won't hear me say this, but anyway, on Facebook or LinkedIn, please keep an eye on your feed, because we will be back very shortly. We'll take a short break, and if I had some music to play, I would do that. But anyway,
Thanks very much
for
again.
having us.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.